Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. It is fantastic to have you here because today we are beginning a sword breaker from Damascus steel. We have our handle cutting in the saw. I am gonna bring these buckets of 1080 and 15 and 20 over here. We're gonna stack up a big old billet and start making some mosaic Damascus for a sword breaker. Oh yes. By now, you know the drill. We heat it up, we smash it together, we then let it cool down before grinding it to clean it, cutting it all up, stacking it up again. Nothing quite like making Damascus.
Okay, we've got 8 pieces chopped off of that bar that Alec forged out. Each of the pieces is 3 1/4 inches long. I'm gonna go ahead and tack them all up, weld the handle on there. We're gonna go ahead and re-weld it. We got that pattern lined up so that it kind of snakes back and forth throughout the whole stack, so it'll look really, really nice when we're ready for our next stack and weld. All right, we've got our 4 pieces mirrored so that there's an explosion coming out of the center. I'm gonna go ahead, re-tack them all together, put them in the forge weld them together, redraw it down to a square, re-4-way that, and that'll be what we tile out into our blade stock.
is a glorious piece of steel. Well done, Will. Taking the helms on making this Damascus. This is gonna be some amazing stuff. This is gonna be a beautiful piece of steel. That's the challenge, you know, on a sword breaker, half the blade is half missing.
Yeah.
So, for patterns, that can be a little bit of a trick. It's gonna be tight, tight, tight. Right now, as you know, we have the pattern flowing with the end grain. The next step after hopping onto the milling machine, gonna be chopping it up at an angle, flipping it all, and welding it together so that the end grain, the grain that is running this way, is running this way on the actual blade. People call this tiling pieces of mosaic. It's a cool technique. You can let this cool down. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about design. So the sword breaker. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble. Sword breaker is not actually designed to break a sword. What the sword breaker is designed to do is it is designed to break the opponent's attack upon you. So I think we'll do a little bit of demonstration here. Will and I are fighting to the death in a... Where are we for this fight to the death? We are in a Florentian battle to the death. Gentlemen with their rapiers attacking each other. Will comes across my left side with a great stabbing blow. But what do I have? A sword breaker. And as his stab comes across, my sword breaker captures the blade, pushes it to the side as I thrust the sword through my opponent. He falls to the ground. This is a gorgeous example of a sword breaker. This sword breaker, this photo is from the Wallace collection, my favorite museum of all time. And this thing is just gorgeous. And one of our favorite things about this are the details. In that sword capturing element of the blade, we have been working on creating a scale drawing of the sword breaker. Part of the things that are important on this design are these little sword capturing elements. And that's what we're gonna be doing a little bit of work on now while our piece of steel cools down. So what excites me is maybe taking some shapes of, like some architectural shapes of the time. So I'm thinking we maybe have a look at some kind of Renaissance era architecture. Will has some photos on his phone from a museum in Italy of a sword breaker. This one has spring-loaded teeth. So I was at the Wallace collection a couple of months ago when I was back in the UK. We can see a whole load of detail here.
What if we did a shape that mimicked the shape of the Duomo? Ooh, I like that.
That's really quite nice. I have an idea. We just put upside down buildings along the blade. Look how good this looks. So we could theoretically do something like that. I don't like it so much. These are a little too bulky. That's kind of interesting. I took the photo of the sword breaker that we're actually kind of basing a lot of this off of, put it in Illustrator, traced around it. That then looks like this, which is very nice also. So we've got lots of options. Our piece of steel in the meantime. I gotta sneeze.
I have to sneeze too.
Whew, teamwork. So Will is now gonna jump onto the milling machine, start cleaning up this piece and getting it ready for the next weld, while I keep cracking on the computer, digitizing the design of this sword breaker.
All right, we've got our billet welded together, TIG welded around all of the seams. There's no way for any air to get in there, so they should weld up just perfectly. And as you can see, it's at kind of a weird angle. And the reason that we've done that is that now we have our pattern that used to be on the end grain running down like that. So the pattern will be repeating down the whole blade. We've got some parent stock on here with the world's most prettiest looking welds, because I had to fill in a huge portion because I've used the same handle for every single weld on this billet. which is something I don't think I've ever done before. Just kind of funny, just a little joke. It's not actually a joke, it's just kind of dumb actually. But I did it anyway, and it should work. So now we need to go ahead, throw this bad boy in the fire, stick it together, and forge ourselves a little sword breaker blade.
Okie dokie, I've made some progress on this. Got a little bit of a cool sword breaker design. Lots of sharp teeth, cool facets and details on the guard.
So one of the other things that I noticed is that on all the historical examples, the bevel comes right up to where.
Okay, so you think come even higher, or do we pull this down?
I think we pull those down. I think we do with slightly widening out the very top of that, just a tiny bit. Yeah.
Cool. So while Will finishes up the grinding, I'm gonna light the forge so it's ready for us to forge out that blade, and it's then back to the design to write down the measurements of everything, the interior dimensions of the tang, and what the hole needs to look like in the handle, all of that, as well as the dimensions of the blade that we need to reach. That doesn't look very good at all. It doesn't look like it welded right there. We have another issue right up here, sadly. I'm gonna see if I can grind down through it to save forging them in any deeper. I think we got through it. A few little moments of grinding, and I hope we don't discover any more of those things once we're done forging. We're a little narrow on the width. Okay, so I'm gonna have to thin the piece down because we're about 100,000ths of an inch too narrow. So we're gonna lose some of the thickness to hopefully gain some width. There we go, now we've got the width. That's good. So now what I'm gonna do, cut off the handle, flip it around, and draw out the tang. Okay, there we go. That is a rough forged sword breaker. So with the blade forged, it is now time for us to do some heat treatment cycles. Now, we want to do all of our normalizing cycles before we do any grinding, because one, we want this thing to be nice and soft, but two, when we are done cutting and filing it, we want to be able to heat it up and go straight into the quench with as little oxidation as possible. So, we are going to be going into the Paragon Heat Treat Ovens, and it is fantastically convenient that they are a channel sponsor. They're sponsoring this episode. So while we do these normalizing cycles, let's chat a little bit about why you're gonna wanna grab yourself one of these Paragon heat treating ovens. So I'm gonna put my rack in goes the bit of steel. And right now with the door open, you can see one of the amazing benefits of these Paragon heat treating ovens, and that is these semi-exposed heating elements. They're mostly embedded into these ceramic baffles, which allows for incredible accuracy of heating, but also incredible amounts of insulation to get you up to heat really fast and keep you at heat using as little power as possible. Oh, I forgot something. The next best thing is inside here, you see we have 1, 2, 3 right back at the bottom, thermocouples. The thermocouples sense the temperature of the kiln in all 3 zones, meaning that you can get the most even heat possible. Because of course, say you have a piece that is heavier at one end than the other, or you open the door and close the door and the front cools down, you then end up with different temperatures through the whole thing. If you have an oven with only 1 thermocouple, all of a sudden you are going to be burning up the tip of your knife or sword as the entire oven is heating up to catch up for the loss of heat in only the front little section. It is fantastic. It's like having 3 kilns in one. And as you can see while we're talking now, Will is over here programming it, and it is a breeze. This particular oven that we have has the Sentinel Smart Touch on it. It's Wi-Fi enabled, it's touchscreen, it's all the gadgets that you'd possibly ever want. But the key is that you're gonna be able to get accurate heat treating, and accuracy is the key to not only making the best product possible, but also being able to have the most consistent results. To go check out Paragon, there is a link in the description where you can learn more about these ovens. This one here is the KM24 Pro. This is a double barrel version, so it's twice as wide. We also have a KM9 here. This one's 9 inches deep, perfect for small works, whether you're making folders, whether you're making small EDC knives. And say you're not a knife maker, they also make all sorts of huge kilns like this. So Will, you have just set it up for the firing. You want to run us through the schedule that you have for this?
Sure thing. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is I've just programmed it in to go to 1900 degrees, which is pretty dang hot. Ramp back down to 800, back up to 1700, back down to 800, 1500, 800, 1300, 800, 1300, and then we're done. And so that basically what we're doing is when we go up to 1900, we're going to get a normalized grain throughout the entire blade, so it's going to be a pretty big grain inside the steel. And for those of you that don't know, steel has a crystalline grain to it, so when you break steel it looks like pieces of sand in there. And basically what we're doing through these heat cycles is we're shrinking that grain down so it's nice and tight. And just like with sand, the tighter the grain, like if you wet sand down and pack it together, it's going to be a lot stronger than just loose sand. So we're going to go ahead and pack that grain nice and tight so that it'll be the best blade possible for breaking, for breaking blows, not swords.
For breaking the parrying of your opponent's sword blow. There we go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Pleasure as always. Be sure check out Paragon in the link below. Thank you, Paragon, again, sponsoring this. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.